So let us see the next most important chapter, which is important from mains point of view, that is industries, right? So let's quickly get into industries. Agriculture is actually considered to be a primary activity, whereas industries is considered to be secondary activities. When we talk about industries, the most important one you need to look at is with respect to classification, where we call industries based on agricultural products as agro-based industries, industries based on minerals as mineral-based industries, and those which are based on raw materials from sea and ocean as marine-based industries, and also you have forest-based industries. So, this is a very common difference. Why are you saying this? The reason is, usually we have a question like, what can be best grown or what type of industries can lead to development in Northeast India? What type of development can be very good in agriculturally prosperous states like Bihar, UP, Punjab and Haryana? What type of industries will be good in mineral-rich states like Jharkhand, Bihar? People, they just try to remember only one or two industrial facts, and they try to talk about these industrial facts in almost all the questions. But when you have a basic difference and understanding, rather than saying that Northeast has lot of forests, we need to use this raw material for other industries, talk about the forest-based industries which can be set up in Northeast, and you can employ the local people so that it can be beneficial for the development of Northeast itself. So here what I am trying to say is, whenever you look at classification, please try to ensure that you are using these terminologies in your answer as much as possible, so that the evaluator will feel that yes, this answer makes sense. Next, on the basis of size, the industries can be classified into small scale industries and large scale industries. When we talk about small scale industries, these are cottage industries where small things are usually produced and small equipments are usually used. It may be hand-ridden or small weapons with little bit of power. But when we talk about large scale industries, it can be iron and steel industry, shipbuilding or so, and it has huge commercial value. In India, usually small scale industries give very good employment opportunity when compared to large scale industries. As small scale industries can be driven by people, Startup India and others will usually work effectively with small scale industries rather than going for large scale industries where huge capital, investment, innovation, all this are actually required. On the basis of ownership, we actually observe that you have private sector industries, public sector industries, you have joint sector industries, that is owned and operated by state and individuals. You also have cooperative sector industries, that is, it is being owned and operated by producers or suppliers of raw materials, workers or both. For example, let us take sugar industries. So whenever we are talking about sugar industries, the sugarcane farmers will come together and they open a cooperative sector, and all the sugarcane will be sent to this industry and the output will be there. The reason is sugarcane harvesting doesn't happen throughout the year. So it will be only in a particular season, and in that particular season, if you have the sugar canes and if you want to open an industry at that time, any person who opens this industry throughout the year, he will be at loss in the remaining time. So the sugarcane farmers themselves, they come together and they have set up this cooperative sector so that it is beneficial for them and also it is easy for them to set up the industry. So cooperative sector where the people who supply raw materials, they come together and they set up. For example, dairy industry, milk industry, right? So here we usually observe that the people who actually give these raw materials, they actually take up the responsibility of the industry as well. Most important one, high possibility you may get a question in mains, is actually with respect to factors which affect the location of industries. Whenever I am talking about the factors which affect location of industries, you should be aware that every industry requires particular factors to be set up. For example, when we take iron and steel industry, it is actually dependent on iron ore and coal. So I would say that it is raw material based industry. When I am talking about textile industry, it is actually based on power. And sometimes it is also based on market. Labor plays a very important role. Without people, it's not possible. And money plays a very important role for few industries. Until and unless there are people who can invest money in that particular industry, you will not have those companies there. For example, textile industries grew around Mumbai for a simple reason that Mumbai was also the financial capital of the country. So capital was also available in Mumbai for setting up of these industries. Then when we talk about land, sometimes whenever we need to establish big industries, for example, you take Tata, which wanted to establish the manufacturing of cars in West Bengal, land was a serious issue. So based on the availability of the land also, the companies decide whether to set up an industry in that region or not. For software industries, if they are willing to get land at a cheaper cost, they are willing to have industries in those regions as well. And at last, the most important one is transport. For example, earlier, almost all the iron and steel industries were present wherever the raw material was present. That is, if iron ore and coal is present in a particular region, you usually used to observe iron and steel industry in that particular region. But now, Visakhapatnam has iron and steel industry, and do you know from where it gets iron ore and coal? Both are imported, because when they import in ships large quantities of iron ore and coal, they become cheaper rather than extracting and locating it in that region. So whenever transportation increases, we usually observe that the location of the industry doesn't matter. And let me take another important thing, dairy farming. Earlier, when the ship, which we use now, it did not have the cooling refrigerators and others in the ship itself. At that point of time, what these Australia, New Zealand and other dairy rich countries used to do, they used to send sheep to the country which want to import. And in that importing country, they used to remove the wool and they used to separate meat, sell meat, wool and all. But now, with the containers having the capacity to refrigerate and preserve it for longer period of time, in Australia itself you have these dairy processing industries which actually benefit the local people as well. So transport plays a very, very important role in the location of the industries. So what are these? Raw material, power, land, transport, labor, capital, market. These 7 factors are very, very important for you to set up any industry, right? So this is very, very important for our preparation. Where do you see industrial regions? Where does industries come up? Usually if one company comes up, for example, iron and steel comes up, around that there will be other companies which are dependent on iron and steel, like automobile manufacturing companies, because they get steel and iron there itself so that they can use it for the production purpose. They need not go in search of the raw material for other industries. So usually if one industry comes up, there will be a cluster of other industries coming up, and this depends on several factors. Every country has identified their own industrial regions, industrial belts being present. You see Tamil Nadu in India, Gujarat, Visakhapatnam to Kolkata. In these regions, you usually identify large amount of industries being present. For example, when I take Eastern North America, we talked about Great Lakes, New York and all. In that region, you find lot of industries. Western Europe, I'm talking about UK, France, Central Europe, Germany, Italy and other countries. Eastern Europe and Eastern Asia, especially when we talk about China, Japan, South Korea, you see these industrial regions, right? Can you see here? Eastern United States, Eastern China, Europe, India, right? All these are very, very important. Mumbai to Pune has a cluster. Bangalore, Tamil Nadu region, Hooghly region, Kolkata, Ahmedabad, Baroda region, Chota Nagpur industrial belt, Vishakhapatnam, Guntur belt. Now, what India is doing, India is planning to go for highway connectivities. For example, we want to connect Amritsar to Kolkata and we call it Amritsar-Kolkata Industrial Corridor. Transport is being developed in that corridor. We have Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor. We have Bangalore-Chennai Industrial Corridor. And we have Mumbai-Bengaluru Industrial Corridor. So there are several industrial corridors which are actually coming across these highways just to ensure that whenever industries are there on these highways, transportation is available. So these are the new clusters we are actually talking today. And India is focusing on a project called as Sagarmala project, where we are focusing on development of the coastal areas. When I say development of the coastal areas, it is very, very important for me to focus on Sagarmala project, where some industries will be developed in these core areas. Next, they actually talk about industries are all not good always. You have industrial disasters. India has seen Bhopal gas tragedy. Similarly, there are different countries in the world which have seen disasters. Bhopal gas tragedy was because of methyl isocyanate. 3rd December 1984, it's important, just try to remember. In China, there was an accident where 64,000 people were evacuated and 9,000 were injured and many were also killed. So what are the risk reduction measures? Densely populated residential areas should be avoided, or they should be actually told what is the measures or mechanisms that they need to follow if there is a disaster. People staying in the vicinity should be aware of the storage of toxins and they should be aware what should be done. If we actually take methyl isocyanate in Bhopal gas tragedy, it is believed that if people would have just taken wet cloths and if they would have put it on their face, then the methyl isocyanate would have been absorbed by these clothes and 100% there wouldn't have been any impact to the people. But this was not known to the people. If they were aware, they wouldn't have been panicked and there wouldn't have been much problem. Fire warning and fighting system should be improved so that in case of emergency, the people can effectively utilize it. Storage capacity of toxic substances should be limited. When we talk about methyl isocyanate, there are so many industries which usually generate it. But it is believed that in European countries, whenever they design this methyl isocyanate storage plant, it used to be something like they generate methyl isocyanate and use it immediately. Storage is very much minimal. But in India, as there was no proper guidelines for these industries, so they had set up methyl isocyanate storage plants. So that led to more disaster. If India had also followed proper guidelines where the methyl isocyanate, which actually erupted, would have been produced only before its use, then India wouldn't have seen that tragedy. So here we call this to be ignorance which lead to death of lot of people. Pollution dispersion qualities in the industries should be improved. That is, even though there is no disaster, pollution from these industries can create more problem to the natural environment around as well. So it's very, very important for us to look at these risk reduction measures. Then do you know, please observe what is called as sunrise industries. Any industry which is emerging is called as sunrise industries. These include information technology, wellness, hospitality and knowledge. Very, very important for you to look at it. Then you have iron and steel industry. As I told you, it is actually dependent on raw material, especially iron and coal. The inputs for the industries includes raw materials such as iron ore, coal and limestone. Like other industries, they require various inputs. This is a feeder industry whose products are used as raw material for other industries. I told you, if you get iron and steel industry, then around that industry, other industries will be present, because the output of this industry will act as input to other industries. Steel output of iron and steel industry will be used in automobile manufacturing, where steel becomes an input in those industries, right? So this is very, very important for us to look. That is feeder industry. The second important factor that you should be aware here is, so you can see in the picture that if you take 8 tons of coal and 4 tons of iron ore and 1 ton of limestone, you get only 1 ton of steel. What is this? See, let me take, I am establishing a company, iron and steel industry in Bangalore, where I do not have coal reserves, I do not have iron ore reserves as well. Now, I have to get iron ore reserves, I have to bring coal reserves, I have to bring limestone, and what is the output? Only 1 ton of steel. But I have a coal reserve, I have iron ore reserve, I have limestone reserve. Let me take, I am establishing iron and steel industry here. So I am getting raw materials from every place, and if I want to sell steel to Bangalore, it is easy for me to transport 1 ton of steel to Bangalore rather than transferring 8 plus 4 plus 1, that is transferring 13 tons for 1 ton is not proper. This is the reason why many people, they say that location of the industry depends upon the raw material availability. If there is an industry which is weight losing industry, that is, if you have a raw material, iron ore and coal, when you add it, it will lose its weight and you get only 1 ton of steel. If it is weight losing industries, then we usually say that let us go for this particular factor. So then they have given what are the benefits of steel. Can you see this picture and paragraph? This was asked in UPSC exam, where they asked you, how has the iron and steel industry location changed over a period of time? You can see almost 100 words. They asked you to write in 100 words. They say that before 1800 AD, iron and steel industry was located where raw materials, power supply and running water were easily available. Later, the ideal location for the industry was near coal fields. Why? 8 tons of coal is required, and close to canals and railways. In canals and railways, waterways and railway lines, iron ore and other materials used to be brought. So rather than taking 8 tons of coal to other places, it was better to set up iron and steel industry near coal and bring iron ore and limestone to that region. And after 1950, iron and steel began to be located anywhere where you have seaports, because you can actually import both iron ore and coal effectively at a lesser cost. So with transportation, we usually see that it has completely varied. Here we want to say that when transportation developed, along with that, the industrial locations also kept on changing. So this was asked in your mains exam. That is the reason I am asking you to read this book carefully for this exam. When we talk about India, it is actually present in Bhilai, Durgapur, Burnpur, Jamshedpur, Rourkela, Bokaro, where your iron ore and coal is significantly present. Whenever you have more raw material, cheap labor, transport and market, it is very much easy for you to consider this particular fact. Now, they take the example of Jamshedpur, and what were the reasons Jamshedpur was chosen for setting up of iron and steel industry. When we see, it was started at Sakchi, near the confluence of rivers Subarnarekha and Karkai. I told you running water is very important, so they use this. And geographically, it is very convenient for the production. The reason for this is, 32 kilometer away there was a railway line. I told you canals are required, railway lines is required. It was close to iron ore, coal and manganese, and Kolkata port was also available, which was a huge market for steel. Tisco gets coal from Jaria fields, iron ore, limestone from Odisha and Chhattisgarh. Karkai and Subarnarekha rivers ensured sufficient water supply, and government policies also helped to set up this in this particular region. So, what is the ideal condition? River should be there, power supply should be there, and you also need limestone, iron ore and coal. Market is also very, very important, right? Then they take the case of Pittsburgh in United States of America, and the locational advantages are iron ore mines were present at Minnesota. Between these mines and Pittsburgh is one of the world's best routes for shipping ore cheaply, that is Great Lakes waterway. I told you the 5 Great Lakes, this was actually used even though the distance was 1500 kilometer. Because of this waterway, they could actually set up there and bring all the minerals there. Along with this, other industries also developed in this region. The next important industry that we need to focus is actually with respect to cotton textile industries, right? So cotton, wool, silk, jute, flax have been used in making cloth. The textile industry can be divided on the basis of raw material, jute industry, cotton, wool and all, forget it. The cotton textile industry is one of the oldest industries in the world, and India was famous for these industries. In 18th century, power looms facilitated the development of cotton textile industry, first in Britain and different parts of the world later. Today, India, China, Japan and USA, which are cotton producers, are also best textile industries. India has glorious tradition, forget about these points, but what is more important for us is, the first successful mechanized textile mill was established in Mumbai in 1854. Initially, this industry flourished in the states of Maharashtra and Gujarat because you had cotton growing region in this. I told you in agriculture where cotton can be best grown, and cotton is not an industry which is weight losing. Either I can manufacture clothes near the cotton growing areas and export the textile directly to other places, or I can set up something in Kolkata, textile industry in northeast, get raw cotton there and also go for weaving and cotton textile industries. So as it is not weight losing industry, it can be present in any part of the world. Ahmedabad is also called as Manchester of India because of its suitability of location. It is actually present on the banks of river Sabarmati river. The first mill was established in 1859 in Ahmedabad. The favorable location factor is it is close to cotton growing areas, and the climate was ideal for spinning and weaving. The reason is, if you take out and where you have moist climate, if you go for spinning and weaving, fibers will not be produced properly. The densely populated states of Gujarat and Maharashtra provided skilled and semi-skilled labor, which is very important for textile industries. Even now you can see wherever textile industries are present, the people around it will be largely benefited with that industry. Well-developed road and railway network permits easy transportation of textiles, and Mumbai was chosen mainly because of its port facilities. From Ahmedabad, they also used to send everything to Mumbai, and from there they used to sell. The other important place is Osaka, which is Manchester of Japan. Again, you have same factors, but Japan do not produce cotton, and it is dependent on imported cotton from Egypt, India, China and United States of America, right? After this, we talk about information technology. This is one industry which can be set up anywhere in the world, but there are some ideal conditions for this as well. It is either present in Silicon Valley, California, or another Silicon Valley that is in Bengaluru, India. Here, they give a clear example why these two are chosen. Bangalore has the largest number of educational institutions and IT colleges in India, and this helped in providing the skilled labor required for setting up of these industries. The city was considered dust-free and low rents and low cost of living at that time. Now it has changed completely, and it was also called as Garden City. So the climate of the city was also very good. The state government of Karnataka adopted IT policy in 1992, which favored companies to come there. The city has the largest and widest ability of skilled managers with work experience. All this actually made them to choose Bangalore. Now, when we compare it with Silicon Valley in United States, close to some of the most advanced scientific and technological centers in the world is present in Silicon Valley. Pleasant climate with attractive and clean environment, plenty of space for development and future expansion as well. Located close to major roads and airports, skilled is available. So these factors made Bangalore and Silicon Valley as hub for information technology. Apart from this, wherever you come across these facts, being Bangalore means to lose one's job to someone in the city of Bangalore. Usually in United States and other countries, most of the IT jobs are being lost because most of these projects are being sent to Bangalore. And when it is sent to Bangalore, the person who is in United States will lose the job. So it is called being Bangalore. A few years ago, many IT jobs in the US were outsourced to countries like India, where equally skilled labor was available at lower salaries. This made the term being Bangalore, and this also led to lot of problems in United States of America, which went to such an extent that Trump, with his rhetoric to fight against outsiders, to provide job to insiders, he had several policies as well. Right? So all these are important for us to know about the industrial location and the factors. From this chapter, you should always remember the factors which determine location of industries. Right? Two examples are very, very important. If your optional is geography, please ensure that with diagrams you are showing these places. If not, even in GS, if you can give the examples present in this chapter, especially things like Bangalore, Silicon Valley, Ahmedabad, Osaka, and also if you can talk about Pittsburgh and Jamshedpur, it makes lot of sense. Please try to remember this during mains. This chapter is very, very important for mains. So after this, let's take up the last chapter, which is human resource, where we talk about population change and other things, right? So let's quickly get into the last chapter of this book, that is human resources.